going to go ahead and get started. I don't know if it's formal security, but something.
We're finding out if there's any public comments right now.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. If everybody could grab a seat, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the North Broward Hospital District regular Board of Commissioners meeting for the month of April. If we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Uring,
Here?
Commissioner Wellens,
Here.
Commissioner Klein,
Here.
Commissioner Gregoire. Here.
All right, great. If Commissioner Wellens, would you mind leading us off on the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Did we have public comments?
No, none at this moment.
None at this moment. Wow. All these people just came to enjoy their Wednesday afternoon at Broward Health. Awesome. Okay, first on the agenda is approval of minutes from our regular board meeting from January 31st of this year. If everybody's had a chance to review those, if a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since I didn't receive the agenda or board book until just a few minutes ago, I've got two issues that are not on the agenda I'd like to walk on. So,
Okay. We can. I'm happy to take that up now.
Okay.
We can do that. That's right.
First item, I'd like to walk on a discussion and a vote on the interim chairperson of the board. And the second item I'd like to walk on is a discussion of the proposed gain share incentive plan. So we'll take the first one up first. I think I'd like to walk that on if there's a second.
Second.
Okay. So are we voting on both of these or one at a
Let's
time?
take them one at a time.
Okay. So the first is a motion to have a discussion on naming an interim chair or chair person of the board. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or any discussion at all?
That's it. You going to vote on it?
It's perfectly fine unless anybody had any comments.
I vote that we do it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Number two, I'd like to walk on a discussion of the proposed gain share incentive plan after we, where you think it's appropriate in the agenda.
Well, we'll do it in the discussion agenda, and it'll be effectively number 6, because we have our discussion agendas 3 and 4 already down. Number 5 is the interim chair. Number 6 would be your discussion of the proposed gain share, if indeed that is the will of this board. So we have a motion. Did we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anybody have any discussion? One question that I have is, in discussing the gain share, I know one of the aspects that was addressed previously was having some, a balanced scorecard and certain elements of the financial metrics that were being, developed. I don't know is that something that you're prepared to discuss?
We started a draft of it to share in a working session with the board. I don't know if we're prepared to.
I think we should take this issue up on 6, and I have some. I walked the issue on. I've got some specific things.
I understand, but we haven't voted on it yet. I just wanted to understand what it was that I was voting on. So are we voting to just? Is your motion just to discuss the gain, because you said proposed gain share, and there was
Well, the
certain
proposed
aspects of
venture,
that.
I would like to discuss it. And then if the board believes that we want to take further action after the discussion, I think we could get to that point at that point.
Okay, I have no objection to discussing things, so.
I mean, there may be a motion to be made after the discussion. Prior.
Okay.
Is that appropriate or not?
I'm not,
No, I'm not
Sorry.
asking the general counsel.
It's appropriate.
we can certainly
You can
discuss
walk
it. I just,
as a discussion item.
Right, I want to walk it on a discussion item, and if we need to act further, we'll get to it at that point during the discussion. Let's just do it in order.
okay, just understand that when someone makes a motion and someone makes a second, there is a discussion of the motion. I wanted to understand what it was that I'm voting
Okay,
on.
I think-
So that's all,
Okay.
that's all I'm getting at. And so
Well, we have an HR committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday, and at that meeting, the purpose of me walking this on is so the board is understanding of what my agenda for that meeting would like to be and the process that we want to move going forward with the gain share incentive plan, compensation plan. There's a lot there, and I think I want to take it up in committee. I want to walk through a number of variables, and I want to put together an action plan. That's what I think I plan on walking you through today.
Okay. All right. No problem.
Is that, I mean, do you want more?
I would just say you're chair of HR. You're free to make
Okay.
your agenda and discuss whatever it is you decide to discuss.
Right, okay,
I just
so-
wanted to understand what I was voting on here, that's all.
No, you're just walking on, I think we're voting on right now is the discussion on the gain share, and then I want to walk on as the HR chair, and then if the board so desires, we may have additional,
Okay.
an additional amendment or
Fair
adjustment at that
enough.
point.
I'm all for discussion.
Okay.
No worries. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we have 2 new items on the discussion agenda. Okay, so moving along, we're at medical staff credentialing. Dr. Todd here, please. Awesome, thank you.
The detailed credential reports for all 4 facilities are in your packet under 2A through 2D. Overall, system-wide, we have a total of 17 new physicians and 14 new allied health professionals for initial appointments, and a total of 132 physicians and 22 allied health professionals for reappointments. There were 47 voluntary resignations and 0 involuntary resignations. All of these appointments and reappointments were reviewed and approved by the C&Q committee and MEC at each facility in accordance with the medical staff bylaws. In addition to the above appointments, there were 22 radiologists at Broward Health Core Springs who requested sedation privileges and were approved by the MEC. Some of the facilities also voted on new medical staff officers, so I would like to explain the new officers at each facility. At Broward Health Imperial Point, the new chief of staff would be Dr. William Jensen. The new vice chief of staff is Dr. Chance Kaplan. And the new secretary treasurer is Dr. Richard Estacio. Their terms are from May 1st, 2018 through April 30th, 2020. At Broward Health Imperial Point, the chair of medicine is Dr. Joel Gelman. The vice chair is Dr. Luis Barreras. And the secretary treasurer is Dr. Rafael Baez. The surgery chair is Dr. Jonathan Levine. The vice chair of surgery is Dr. Basana Chinchbachai. And the secretary and treasurer of Department of Surgery is Dr. Minnie Borghese. The psychiatry chair is Dr. Sandeep Mendirata. The Vice Chair of Psychiatry is Dr. Nelson Cordero Torres. And the Secretary Treasurer is vacant at this moment. At Broward Health Medical Center, the new Chief of Staff is Dr. Michael A. Morrison. The new Vice Chief of Staff is Dr. Sunil Kumar. And the Secretary Treasurer is Dr. Michael Reddy. At Broward Health North, the department officers are Department of Chair Surgery is Dr. Stephen Naide, N-A-I-D-E, I don't know how to pronounce that. And the secretary is Dr. Senji Gupta. The medicine chair is Dr. Amal Hanna, and the vice chair is Dr. Firaz Hossein, and the secretary treasurer is Dr. Jorge Barrero. This concludes my report, and I'm respectfully requesting approval from the board for these nominations and
Okay, great.
credentials report.
If I could entertain a motion to approve the medical staff changes, additions, and reappointments as presented in our binder, as well as outlined in Dr. Tall's report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Tall. Dr. Tall, if you could stay up, we have on the next item on the agenda is recognition of outgoing chief of staff.
Okay,
So
very
if you
good.
could,
So at two facilities, there are two chiefs of staff who have termed out. They served 2 consecutive terms, and they're no longer going to be the chief of staff. So I just mentioned the new two chiefs of staff that were voted by the medical staff. So in recognition of their services to Broward Health, I would like to call in Susan Newton, who is the interim CEO for Broward Health Imperial Point, to present the award for Dr. Lukowitz, who is the outgoing chief of staff for Broward Health Imperial Point.
Dr. Lukowitz, can you come up here? Good afternoon, board. So I'd like to thank Dr. Lukowitz for being chief of staff for the last 4 years. About 4 years ago, we were in need of medical leadership and medical staff leadership, and Dr. Lukowitz stepped up to the plate and he helped out. It wasn't necessarily in his plan for that year to join the leadership, but he did, and it just shows what kind of man you are, and it shows what kind of leader you are. I want to thank you for all the effort that you put forth to make sure that the medical staff and Imperial Point became a better hospital. And Teresa, our manager of medical staff office, wants to thank you for always being available. She said that every time she called you that you were right there for her. Thank you for all the calls that we did at night. I'm sure a lot of midnight calls, and you always put the patient first. You always made sure that whatever your decision was, it was going to make sure that the patient was going to be better cared for, so we thank you for that. You certainly made Imperial Point a better hospital, so thank you so much.
excellent. So, Dr. Lukowitz, you're the only chief of staff that I've known since I've been on the board, so thank you. Not the only chief of staff anywhere, but your facility. But thank you for your service.
It's been an honor and a pleasure serving, representing.
Any words
the
of wisdom
physicians.
for the next person? Because I wish I had those before.
Protect your head. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You said, Dr. Todd, you said there was 2, so.
So next, I would like to call up Sandra Todd Atkinson, CEO of Broward Health Medical Center, to present the award for Dr. Yogel.
We're pranksters, so you have to bear with us. I'll just warn you. So Dr. Yogel has been our chief of staff for 4 years, and he's been a member of our medical staff since 1987. So let me tell you a few things about him. We've learned this over the past 4 years. He's a good listener when you can get his attention. He loves to relax with a good bottle of wine. He loves music, especially Jimmy Buffett. He also loves a good dancer when he's given the opportunity. He loves a good joke, and he likes to laugh. He loves to smile, and I promise you, he is the life of the party. Everybody that knows Dr. Yogle loves Dr. Yogle. And Dr. Yogle, we appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you. Thanks. You're probably wondering why I'm carrying this around with me. Well, put this here. Some of my friends and colleagues gave me this the other night at our meeting. It doesn't say "Make America Great." It says "Made Broward Health Great Again." Maybe it's fun somewhere you can get it in there. But you know, I just want to say, if you don't mind,
Of course.
a couple things. You know, the end, I would serve probably during the most turbulent times that Broward Health has seen, and you know, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of commissioners come and go. I don't think there's any of the original commissioners here that when I started as chief of staff. I've seen CEOs come and go, some in a bad way. I've seen tragedies. I've seen airport shootings. I've seen school shootings in my own neighborhood. You know, because I live in Parkland as well. And if I have to give one word of wisdom, what I would say is really keep your contract with your physicians as your partners. And don't, you know, unfortunately, I feel there might have been an effort to try to marginalize physicians. And I think it's more important for you to remember that physicians are really your best customers. I said it many times before, billboards and commercials don't bring patients to the hospitals, and they certainly don't take care of the patients, but the doctors do. And there's a lot of good core doctors that we have, particularly at Broward General. I always will call it Broward General. So, but just really keep a close relationship with your doctors. You know, they are really the heartbeat of your organization, in my opinion. And I don't think I made Broward Health as great as it can be, but I think you all have the opportunity to do that. And I hope that you will continue. I will still be around. You're not getting rid of me totally. I still will sit on medical council as past chief of staff, and I hope to help contribute to making this place even greater again. How's that? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Careful what you wish for.
I'll look forward to getting one of those when I leave. How's that? Next up, Gino, you'll take over for Bev's report. Anyone curious as to where Ms. Capasso is? She's in, I believe it's in Orlando at the Safety Net meeting, which unfortunately conflicted with the few evenings that the four of us could all get on the same page. So appreciate you stepping in for her, and
Thank you.
take it away.
Okay, so just a few updates from the month of March. We had a busy month. In addition to the several community events that we also that we usually do, we also celebrated Doctors' Day throughout the district, where we thank Broward Health's physicians for their steadfast dedication and commitment to patient care. You know, as Dr. Yogle said, Broward Health's mission would not be possible without our doctors' significant contributions to patient care. So we wanted to, again, just reiterate our thanks for our physicians, our physician partners. We also held our annual medical staff meeting on April 10th at the Broward Health Medical Center, where more than 200 physicians attended, which was great to see the engagement at that level. Wanted to congratulate this year's award recipients. We had Dr. Gubin, Drs. Ronald Yee, Dr. Niederman, Dr. Frank Cantanella, and Dr. Kenneth Herskowitz for achievements that they have made, which was voted on by their medical staff peers. So we want to thank those outstanding doctors for their dedication to patient care here at Broward Health. This week we're also celebrating, this is Alan's favorite week, the Healthcare Volunteer Appreciation Week, because I think we tallied it up one year, and the dollar amount that they really contribute for their volunteer services is astounding. They've contributed thousands of hours to our patients, and they work alongside our healthcare team every day. They show up consistently, and they really contribute to Broward Health's culture of kindness and compassion. They're an integral part of our patient experience at Broward Health, and we want to thank them this week. Broward Health was recently awarded a grant by Susan G. Komen to support our healthcare system's Every Woman Matters program, which is aimed at decreasing the risk of premature death due to breast cancer in various female populations throughout Broward County. We're very grateful to Susan G. Komen for providing this funding, and it will help to provide life-saving care to women in need, which we're deeply committed to winning the battle against breast cancer in Broward. I think you've heard that theme from us, and we will continue with that. Quick update in HR news. Barry Gallison, who you know was previously the corporate director, he was the regional director of quality and safety for Broward Health Imperial Point. He's done a great job there, and we've recently promoted him to corporate director of quality. So we're excited to have him start working with Lee Gezzi. During the month of March, we had 562 community events, which touched over 28,000 lives. Just a couple of those, on March 31st, Broward Health Medical Center held a Stop the Bleed event, which included free hands-on tourniquet training sessions for the public. This was part of a national movement to have members of the public become trained, equipped, and empowered to help in a bleeding emergency before the first responders arrive. I just wanted to thank Dr. Igor Nikiforenko and Dr. Benny Menendez, who led the training session. The event also was supported by the City of Fort Lauderdale, the Fort Lauderdale Police Department, and Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue. On April 5th, Broward Health Imperial Point recently celebrated being named a top performer in the Human Rights Campaign's annual Healthcare Equality Index. These findings were part of the 11th edition of the Healthcare Equality Index, which scores healthcare organizations on policies and practices dedicated to equitable treatment of LGBTQ patients, visitors, and employees. So we were proud to receive that award. On April 6th, Broward Health leaders attended the 33rd annual Florida State Minority Supplier Development Council Expo, where certified minority business suppliers met with corporate and government organizations with the goal of creating new relationships, ventures, and opportunities for growth. Broward Health also received an award for the hospital system's ongoing support for the Florida State Minority Supplier Development Council. Our aim is to partner with diverse suppliers to reflect the multicultural population that we serve, and in our strategic planning sessions, we've maintained that as a priority. So we're excited to continue with that. We also participated in an event honoring the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This event commemorated the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination, and there were many in attendance, both community leaders, community members, local legislators, and state legislators. So we were great attendance on that. And then on the 15th of April, Broward Health Coral Springs hosted the annual April Pools Day event in Coral Springs, where attendees participated in water safety activity, practiced CPR, and learned about resources to help make homes water safe. Finally, Broward Health recently hosted a health fair for the Broward Sheriff's Office at the main jail. We had nearly 100 Broward Sheriff's Office employees in attendance, and 60 attendants received health screenings. Broward Health Medical Center and the Broward Health Community Health Services participated in that event. And that's the conclusion of the update.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Jim? No? All right. Next is the consent agenda. Just for people's knowledge, the one item on the consent agenda was acceptance of the March financial statements, which were presented by Mr. Goldsmith in our Finance Committee meeting. If there's unless there's any objection, if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Just to remind everyone, we have 4 items on the discussion agenda. First is authorizing the President and CEO to approve and enter into a contractual agreement for on-call general surgery at the 90th percentile.
Yes.
Do you want to let us know what that is exactly about?
Absolutely. So we had a fair market value assessment of the proposed arrangement for general surgery on-call. It was conducted by an independent third party with fair market value and commercial reasonableness, placing it at the 90th percentile. The call panel provides emergency on-call services for those presenting to the ED. It also includes inpatients requiring surgical evaluation, consults of surgery for surgical oncology, also in-house support for obstetrical and gynecological general surgery, and coordinated procedures to prevent mortality during high-risk deliveries, in addition to the placement of emergently needed central lines. Some of these items are not necessarily traditional in a general surgery call, so our general surgeons here not only are operating in a high acuity environment, given the medical center, with both their case mix acuity as well as the trauma services and tertiary care facility that they are, but they're also doing additional things that in other facilities, for example, the surgeons that would traditionally coordinate procedures to prevent mortality during high-risk deliveries, such as placenta accreta or complications from terminations, would be really done by a gyne-oncologist. Here, general surgery handles that. Likewise, central line placements in other facilities could be handled by other specialties, such as interventional radiology or critical care medicine physicians, but they're also handled by general surgery here. So they really are performing at or above the 90th percentile, which is why we're asking for the authority to compensate them at the 90th percentile, which we did receive fair market valuation approval for. So
It says a contractual arrangement, but there has to be more than one physician. Is this a physician group that we're talking about?
it's really for any, you're right, it's for any physician or physician group who wishes to participate and is qualified to participate in on-call services for general surgery.
So it would be a
at
series
medical
of
center.
contractual agreements with anyone willing to do this?
That's correct. And maybe we can make that adjustment. I'll make the adjustment verbally in the staff recommendation. So I'll say, therefore, it is requested that the Board of Commissioners of the North Broward Hospital District authorize the President CEO to approve and enter into contractual agreements for on-call general surgery at the 90th percentile.
Okay.
Gino, how many contracts are we talking about?
I'm not
Well, I
sure.
guess
Do you know?
how many spots? Maybe less contracts than spots, but
Less than 10, I can tell you that, but I don't have the exact number. I can get it for you.
It's 30 days. It's 360 days.
I can tell you, we would have
There you
no
go.
more than 5, because we would have 5 in a rotation of positions, so no more than that.
okay. So
Obviously, if they come in and qualified, then Lynn can speak to that. I can't disqualify a position if they're qualified to come.
we're looking to fill 5 spots.
That would be my ideal. Now, if I have a 6th or a 7th show up, they're able to be credentialed to do it, then I can't exclude them.
And this is a currently identified deficiency.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, and it was noted in the financial discussion that we had at the Finance Committee that some of the surgical numbers are down. Is this a factor in that?
Well, that's the other thing that affects it is I've got less physicians on call than I need, so these physicians are taking a long call. And I'm talking to them about that.
Sandra, would you mind coming up here? I'm not sure everyone can hear. Thank you.
So these physicians actually cover call and share the call amongst themselves. So if I had employed physicians, certainly they would pick it up, but I don't. And because I don't, then I have to open up to qualified physicians within the community. These are very high-risk patients with a high chance of mortality. So, you know, for us to have these physicians on staff, should we get into trouble, obviously we need them within 30 minutes.
Right, so we need physicians to cover these important
Absolutely.
situations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Otherwise, we could have a bad outcome.
And in the meantime, we're looking to recruit, I imagine, at the same time.
We've got some physicians interested in it. The fair market value assessment, of course, had to be done first.
Now, how would these contracts for the on-call physicians, would they have an out if some of those recruitment efforts are successful?
There is outs in the contract. I think Lynn probably is better positioned to speak to that than I am.
Right, so there are
without cause termination. And what would happen is if there were more, if Sandra's dream comes true and there were more general surgeons, at a certain point, we call back the FMV company because the valuation is determined significantly on the burden of call. So the more physicians, arguably the fewer days of call that they would have. And at some point, the independent appraisal company may say, okay, now we have to redo the analysis because instead of 5 doctors, you have 10. And then we would redo the fair market value and we'd have to shift it. So we do have provision in those agreements for any of those possibilities.
What would be the time frame we'd have to notify them if we were making a change to their compensation because we obtained a fair market valuation that said that this is qualified at a 70% pay level? Do we have to give them a 30-day notice? Is it immediate?
It would generally be about 30 days. It depends. Some specialties have a little longer depending on how many people in the rotation and how difficult it would be to fill.
And Gino, this is something that is not completely out of the realm of possibilities at a system like ours or other hospital facilities. I mean, could you speak to that? Or just
Yeah, not at all. So there's when we obtain fair market valuations for different on-call specialties, generally we'll be given a range of what is fair market value and commercially reasonable, and then there is in the fair market valuation report, there is some commentary that explains certain specifics and unique factors here. So for example, one of the unique factors here is that they talked about the burden of being on call for general surgery at this facility is some of the highest they've seen anywhere in the nation. So that's why they felt very comfortable with us compensating at the 90th percentile. And I do, once the discussion is done, I do want to make an amendment just to point out that for the staff recommendation, this is only at Broward Health Medical Center. There's different rates at different facilities based on the burden at each of the facilities. So this is specifically only at Broward Health Medical Center.
Okay. Any further discussion?
There was one question I had under action/project description where it talked about there was a reasonableness evaluation of the proposed arrangement. So is there currently, is it a blanket proposal? So you have terms and conditions that you're working with in terms of it being the proposed arrangement? Or
so the commercial reasonableness portion of that, and general counsel can stop me if I butcher this, but it's that is simply stating that the arrangement that we're looking to enter into is essentially needed. It would be a reasonable arrangement for us to have as a requirement to do business.
okay, well, it certainly sounds like an important need.
Absolutely. It's core. It's one of our core services.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? If I could have a motion then to...
I'll make a motion to that the Board of Commissioners, North Broward Hospital District, authorize the President and CEO to approve and enter into contractual agreements for the on-call general surgery at the 90th percentile for Broward Health Medical Center.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Good note. Unanimous. All four people. Next on the discussion agenda is the authorization to accept funding and execute an amended contract to provide nurse family partnership services to at-risk, low-income, first-time mothers in the amount of $510,600.
Yes, thank you. So the nurse family partnership model in Broward County has been rigorously studied. It's a community health program, and it has been shown to have a high degree of evidence that it works across a variety of health, social, and economic outcomes. The program focuses on low-income first-time moms. So the way that it works is each mother is partnered with a registered nurse early on in pregnancy, and the mother then receives ongoing visits that continue through her child's second birthday. And this is really dedicated to improve the outcomes of these high-risk patients. It's $510,600 for 18 months, beginning April 2018 to September 2019. It's a great program, so we're looking forward to hopefully receiving this funding. Therefore, it's requested that the Board of Commissioners of the North Broward Hospital District authorize the President and CEO to accept funding and execute an amended contract to provide nurse-family partnership services to at-risk, low-income, first-time moms in the amount of $510,600.
So each one of these registered nurses would have approximately 25 mothers that they would be monitoring from pregnancy through?
That they would be assigned to, absolutely, for up to 2 years.
And would they go to the mothers in the community, and the
Yes.
mothers would come to the facilities as necessary?
Yes, both. Yep.
And who would these registered nurses report to if it falls through the cracks?
So they report up through, we contract with different nurses depending on the geography of where the patients are needed. So it's really coordinated. It's administered through Broward Health, and it's coordinated through the Broward Regional Health Planning Council and the Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. So they have a monitoring tool that they use to ensure that patients are getting followed up on, that they have to report back, they have to report in, so that if we were not in compliance with that or missing for some variety of reason, then they would review that and see, is it patient non-compliance, or is it a nurse that's not making it to the appointment, which is usually not the case. It's usually around non-compliance when we have a fallout, but the compliance rate for this program has actually been pretty high.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, questions for Mr. Santorio?
I make a motion that we accept the staff proposal here, and this sounds like a very, very worthwhile process
Second.
and something that we should be doing.
Sorry.
Great.
I'm too finished, sorry.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, I believe, was the discussion of interim chair. So, since you made the motion, Mr. Wellens, you want to start us off?
Yes, I'd like to make a short statement and let you know where I stand with this. This board consists of 4 commissioners, which is obviously much less than the full slate of 7. We can barely get a quorum together for meetings, and I don't think that's the best path forward to a highly functioning organization. This board is a highly functioning that can offer guidance and counsel to the senior leadership team at Broward Health. The board chair is the focal point of the board. It's the most highly visible person for the decisions the board makes. The board chair sets the agenda. The board chair works most closely with the CEO and the executive leadership team. The board chair is responsible for driving all of the initiatives of the board with respect to governance and supervision of the district. And the board chair is the most responsible for public comment on the direction of the district and where we're going. Given all that, I think we have a responsibility as a board to select a leader, and I don't think it's something we can wait on. I nominated Commissioner Klein at the last meeting, and I want to further that discussion today. I believe that Commissioner Uri has given an enormous amount of time to this board. He has been a part of this board for a long time, and this has nothing to do with personal Commissioner Uri. But I believe the board chair needs to be completely free of any conflicts related to the district. I think the board chair needs to be able to provide a leadership and a path forward without a cloud of scrutiny. And it's unfortunate that we're in this position, but I think Commissioner Klein gives us that best path forward at this time until the governor appoints 2 more commissioners or the October election period. Now, that's not normally how a board would work. Normally a vice chair would step up, but I think we have a responsibility to this community to look in a different direction for independence, to get from under the cloud for the time being, and let this board be led by a person who's demonstrated the intellectual ability, the financial understanding, the legal understanding of some of the aspects. And I think it just is the right thing to do for the community from a PR standpoint at this particular time. And I wish I didn't have to do this because I have the utmost respect for Commissioner Uri, and I hope it doesn't, this is not a personal, this is just my taking my responsibility as a board member very, very seriously and understanding that optics matter, perception matters, and I think it's the best path forward. So I'm asking for that to occur, and maybe see if we have a second in that.
Well, let me, one of the reasons why I had wanted to postpone this, I had actually expected it to be on the agenda this meeting, but the reason why I had wanted to postpone any discussion about this at our last meeting was because it is a big responsibility. It's a big demand of time, and it was really, quite frankly, well, I was appreciative, of course, of Commissioner Gregoire's motion. I was concerned about the time that it was going to take from me, coupled with the time that it was going to take on with respect to other committees, because those committee assignments are also going to be spread, instead of amongst 7, to be spread amongst 4. Perhaps I should have mentioned this prior to your conversation, but I'm actually going to remove myself from consideration regardless. So perhaps that makes this an easier conversation. So.
And I'd like to also comment, you all know that we're not allowed to speak to each other on any commission business from one meeting to the other. So when we leave here and there's a disagreement, as there was last time, we all agonize in private. And I spoke to 2 good friends and I said, I think the world of Chris, but I think in deference to the fact that we must be united and we must have a chair, I'm going to withdraw my nomination of Chris, who I think is entirely qualified, and I really don't think he has the kind of conflict that would disqualify him. But I was prepared at this meeting to withdraw my nomination of Chris in favor of Commissioner Klein. And so I think we're united that Commissioner Klein is.
I'll make a motion.
Probably
I think we have a motion, and do we have a second?
I second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'll note that if we could. It was unanimous.
Can I say something, Commissioner, real quick?
Of course.
Gary? I want to thank you for recognizing the importance of this decision. I know it didn't come easy, and I think you need to be commended for understanding where we are and where we need to go and putting the district ahead of any personal preferences or whatever. And I think that's honorable of you. So thank you very much.
Well, I can assure everyone in this room and everyone on this board, I'm not here for accolades or certainly not for thoughtful mentions in the newspaper. But I'm really, truly here to just do the best I can. That's calling balls and strikes as I see them. Don't get them all right, but that's what I'm here for. So, and I will continue to be here for that. So, no worries. Next.
So does that?
That's. It was.
If you accept, of course.
That's what I'm wondering.
Well, I sure would have hoped to have heard that, but during the discussion part.
Remember when all your friends probably said to you, why?
Just for the record, he did vote.
Right.
Yes, so I would assume that was accepting of the nomination.
So yes, I humbly accept. I appreciate the honor and the recognition, and I thank you, Vice Chairman Uri, for all of your service, and I think that your considerations, are appropriate. It is a lot of time. Obviously, we all spend a lot of time. We all have other lives and other responsibilities, and certainly that factors into all of this. Unfortunately, I'm the kind of person who can't say no, even notwithstanding whatever the time commitment is. So I'll just have to find more hours in the day than maybe currently exist. But at the end of the day, if I can speak to this,
Of course.
this is a team effort. We are a board, So these are just positions on the board, but at the end of the day, we're a board that has to get a lot of things accomplished, and there's a lot of committee assignments, and we all chair different committees as part of that, and we've all been wearing different hats, and Commissioner Uri, of course, the longest, and we need to continue to work together as a team, as a united board, and I'm glad that we have consensus now going forward. As I said at the last meeting, I'm happy to serve in whatever capacity I've been asked to serve. When I was appointed, this wasn't certainly my plan, was to become chairman. I wasn't planning to become secretary-treasurer, as I was appointed to several months ago. And obviously I've worn several hats already. Not yet the one that Louis Yogel has, but hopefully I'll be able to earn that one in the future, having made Broward Health greater. And that at the end of the day can only happen though if we all work together. And when I say all, I mean all of us, because there's a lot of different stakeholders here. Obviously the board and the executive staff and the board staff, all the medical staff, and the doctors and the nurses and the executives of the various hospitals on down, and those who have taken leadership roles at the hospitals, the physicians who have taken those roles, which certainly we appreciate. Because obviously here we're taking on certain responsibilities in addition to just being board members, and the gratitude goes out to those physicians who are stepping up and taking on those additional responsibilities at each of the hospital locations as well. And of course, all the community members who continue to give us their support, because that's at the end of the day who we serve. We serve Broward County, and we obviously want to have the support of the community as we continue to improve the services we provide and increase those. And at the end of the day, I'm thankful that we're heading in the right direction already. So we've got a great executive team in place. We've got a great board team in place. Hopefully we'll continue to add to that. It'll make a meeting schedule a little bit easier. But at the same time, we've got a great team, and our finances are heading in the right direction. Our quality is heading in the right direction. Our outreach and our community services are heading in the right direction. And our tax reliance is also heading in the right direction, which is downward. So right now, we need to continue to work towards all of those goals and continue to improve. And again, I'm thankful to have the opportunity to chair the board and, as we all head in that direction. So thank you, Commissioner Wellens and Commissioner Gregoire and Commissioner Uri for the responsibility, and I hope to serve well.
She'll lead us in the next agenda item. How's that?
I like surprises as much as everybody else.
All right, yeah, that was quick. All right, the next agenda item 6, the gain share discussion.
I'd like to propose, should the board choose to adopt this motion, that we agree to temporarily halt further implementation of gain share or incentive compensation plan until such time that the HR committee has had some additional time to consult with some outside counsel on the creation of a plan in accordance with customary and accepted rules and procedures. I've not seen any formal draft documents of the plan. I've not seen any eligibility requirements in any detail. I haven't seen a list of potential recipients across the district. I haven't seen the metrics yet, the financial metrics, the balanced scorecard. And I certainly haven't seen any metrics related to why we're in this position, and that is the successful adherence or outperformance in terms of rate, our metrics against our compliance requirements of the CIA. The HR committee is meeting next week, and my hope is that this board gives the HR committee the authority to direct the general counsel to go outside of Broward Health, outside of anybody we've worked with, and find us a benefits consultant, legal guidance, a lawyer who writes incentive compensation plans, executive compensation plans, who doesn't do any business with districts, never done any business with district, has no ties to anything that we've done. Somebody completely independent to help the committee define what this should look like, how we should be measuring our performance, make sure that what we put in place is 100% consistent with what would you expect to see in a plan like this at any for-profit or non-profit organization. I think it's really critical. There's 4 people on this board. There's two of us on this committee. That's a big responsibility for 2 people to take up. Had we had 6 or 7 board members with various business experience, I think we could get a lot farther. But I just think we're moving towards a very significant commitment of this district, and I want to make sure that we get this right. This is important. And I want to make it clear as can be. I am 100% on board with the belief that you need to pay your leadership team competitively, and an incentive compensation plan where it ties their performance to the metrics that this board is going to hold them against is important. And if they meet those and exceed those metrics, and I think number 1 is compliance, outperformance with the requirements of the CIA. I think patient care quality, financial performance. If they achieve those goals, they deserve to get paid, and I'm 100% with them on that. But I just think we're moving a little too quickly when we haven't got the detail that we need. So I think it's imperative that we get it right, and I think it's imperative that everybody on this board is comfortable with moving forward with this before we do anything, and that would be for the current and future gain share years. I think we have to take a step back and just do the hard work that we haven't seen, and I really believe we need to step outside for the independence in establishing the metrics. I think it's the right thing to do on behalf of the taxpayers. I have the utmost confidence in this management team and this leadership team and the new CEOs at all the hospitals and chief operating officers of hospitals. We have a lot of new talented people working here. I'm not sure that all of these new leaders know exactly what it is that we are going to hold them against. And I think it's important that we're fair with them and we lay this out in a structured plan that they understand and that makes financial sense and that is competitive and is fair. So I'm asking really for 2 things. I'm asking for the board to grant the HR committee the authority to have the general counsel go out and hire somebody, a lawyer, who can help us and advise us, totally independent. And number 2, to allow us an opportunity to develop, and I will make the same commitment I've always made. I will work 9-10 hours a day on this until we get this right. To give the HR committee an opportunity to develop an actionable plan that we can come back to the board in a very short period of time with an adoption agreement, with a plan, with eligibility, everything detailed so we know what we're voting for. I think that conceptually we voted yes on the concept, but we need to make sure that the execution and the creation is important and we get it right. So there's 2 pieces to my adoption, to my amendment. One is to grant us the legal authority to hire somebody, and secondly, to give us the authority to pull back from implementation, at least until we've had a chance as a committee to develop an action plan and present something back to this board before we move any forward from here.
What was your anticipated schedule for all this?
I've noticed a HR committee for Tuesday morning. I plan on meeting with Peter. I plan on meeting with Alan. I plan on meeting with the other member of that committee, and I believe it's Chris. And hopefully by next Tuesday, we'll have a council, if not engaged, at least a couple of council, if we haven't been able to engage anybody, who specializes in this. And hopefully that person can give us advice on how to go forward. These are not that complicated. A lot of it is cutting and pasting the language. When you're talking about benefits, eligibility, compensation for groups of people that have not been clearly identified yet, and we haven't segmented them, that's where I think you really need to think this through and make sure that what we're doing is fair. what we're doing is competitive, and what we're doing is within customary standards. So my time frame, I still would like to move as quick as we possibly can. And I do not think this is something that's going to take a year or 2 years to get right. I think we need some time to look at it and make sure we get it right.
And you wouldn't have this impact what's already the bonus for this year that has been projected, or this would also impact that?
Well, I think we have to look at this year to make sure that whatever.
Because this year wasn't on, parameters. It didn't have metrics. It was just
It had
a
financial
percentage.
parameters, but
That's
again,
it, right.
I can't tell you how many people have come to me around the community, doctors and other people have said, I'm reading this in the paper, what are you doing? How is this going to work? And quite honestly, I think there's some merit to taking a step back and making sure we get this right. I want nothing more than every employee at Broward Health to have an opportunity to make more money, to be more successful, to grow in the job. And I'm 100% supporter of that. But I think we need to take a step back and look at this on a two-prong, interim and long-term. Because this is something that we're going to commit ourselves to for the long term.
But you're talking about all the bonus pool, all the gain
Yes.
share, everything to put on hold until you have an opportunity to do some investigation. And
Correct, and I think we'll do it in a stage. We'll do it step 1 and step 2. Step 1 being anything near term, step 2 will be longer term. So, but I think we need to get advice and counsel from outside, people who do this on a regular basis. There are lots of law firms that specialize in executive benefit packages and create these documents, and I just think we need to hear from them. It can't be something done internally. I just don't think that's the right approach. Not that I have a problem with it. It's not that I don't trust them. I just think it's from a transparency and a governance standpoint. We need some independent counsel to make sure what we're doing is reasonable.
one more, and then I promise to shut up. Well, I
No,
promise.
you don't.
One more. So you would anticipate that we would have, I like paper, I like reading. I would like to have a document that I can read and analyze and see if I agree with its contents. That's what you're anticipating eventually would come back to us before we approve.
I would like to see something in 30 to 60 days, if it's possible. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to have something in 30 days, maybe 60 days on the outside. Because I think this is, again, a lot of the legal language, and you know better than me, is a lot of it's cut and paste. It's when you get to the benefits and eligibility
The fine points.
and dissecting pieces of your employment pool. I just want to make sure that that's the piece that has to be customized. I don't know what the time frame, but I can't imagine this is something that's going to take months and months to develop. I think it's shorter than longer.
Yeah, let me just say, first of all, I am absolutely all for getting it right. I like your idea of having some type of independent, I guess for lack of a better word, review and endorsement. I'm a little concerned, and perhaps it's semantics, but I'm a little concerned with the second part of either HR committee or this board engaging in putting together what those operational aspects are and creating the document ourselves. I think that at least potentially broaches on operational matters that at least it concerns me enough to raise that, because ultimately the way I understood things to be left before was the concept of having some type of a gain share plan, having some type of an incentive compensation plan, where we were essentially authorizing management to put something together, because why put a whole bunch of work and effort into putting something together if the concept itself wasn't something that was supported? And my understanding was we would have been presented with a balanced scorecard and what those metrics are for approval, and absent that approval, there would be no incentive compensation plan to implement. I'm just a little concerned about being in the weeds, creating a document, and I'd rather have that operational issue be, I guess, vetted.
So I think that what I imagine Commissioner Wellens is speaking to is from a policy standpoint, determining what the board wants to see as part of the metrics or the eligibility. That's a policy decision. And then how to operationalize it would be, Gino and Alan, et cetera, and Peter coming together with ideas. But the mark of what you want to incentivize is a policy decision for the board.
That I have
And
no.
I'm guessing that's what Commissioner Wellens is saying, with the advice of an independent counsel that we would retain, who does benefits, to say, hey, this is a best practice. And the CIA, I heard Commissioner Wellens say, is very integral in the compliance program to that, and that would be the board's decision from a policy perspective.
That's 100%. I am not intending to write this policy.
Right.
I am not intending to develop the metrics. I am not intending to get down in the weeds and operational. We as a board need to provide, from a policy standpoint, this is what's important. It's compliance, it's patient care, it's quality outcomes, whatever it is. Staff's going to have to work with to develop those metrics that they're going to. But I don't think it's fair for them to do it on their own. I don't think it's right that they do it without our overall guidance on the triggers. What's in how you measure the triggers is up to them. But I think we have to establish what we want to evaluate them on. How are we? What is it of the CEO that we're going to evaluate at the end of this year for her performance? What is it of the general counsel that we're going to evaluate? What is it in the compliance for Nick? What is it that we're going to hold him accountable? How does he get measured against his performance metrics? These are policy issues, and it needs to be part of the big plan. I am not intending to write it. I'm intending to get the meeting together, get the people in the room that need to do this, get the information out there, and get a flowing of information between staff and outside counsel, and let them draft something for our approval. And they may be very well long ways down that road. I just haven't seen anything, and it's April, the end of April. We're getting close to the end of the year, and we haven't seen anything. And I'm saying we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that what we do and how people are getting paid is proper and right, and it's fair, and it's competitive. And it may very well be. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I want to see the plan as it is. I want to see the document. I want to see the eligibility requirements, and I want to see who across the system is participating and who's not.
I obviously share that. I was under the impression that was already the plan. I thought we were, again, the way at least the way I understood it, was that balanced scorecard and that whole development of those metrics was going to come through HR and ultimately to the board for approval. I will say I do definitely like the idea of having someone independent outside the organization to assist us in our vetting and approval of such policy. So I'm totally supportive of that. I guess maybe I'm missing what exactly is happening that was outside those boundaries, maybe, other than the independent person.
But I haven't seen the scorecard. I haven't even seen the document. So.
No.
Could I maybe ask?
That's why I asked if it was developed, because I didn't understand what it was we were going to be talking about.
Why don't we hear from the executive team?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me just clarify a little bit. I think the timeline that you're on, in terms of the fact that we're in April and you haven't seen something yet, there's two timelines, remember. What we came and presented was a balanced scorecard approach which aligns incentive compensation with the appropriate group of people who have been previously selected and is consistent with the industry standard. That's based on balanced scorecard, right? And that is due for the next fiscal year. The first component of it, which wouldn't apply to a balanced scorecard, which is why it was only half of the amount that we recommended for the next fiscal year, was strictly based on our financial performance above and beyond the already set budget. So the question I have is, and the board in the last board meeting approved that, and then what we were waiting on was, pending the financials, what we were waiting on is the balanced scorecard would then come back to HR committee to be presented to the board for the board to review. maybe it would benefit to explain. So actually Jackson just recently went through, and this is part of the reason I feel extremely comfortable with how conservative the plan is. Jackson just recently went through a similar independent audit, and I wanted a little bit of clarity for your recommendation, because the way that it worked is, and this will be the third one that I've been through in 3 different organizations, the company comes in and reviews 2 things. They review what are the metrics that we set, and do they feel that that's compliant in the industry standard? And then they review what is the actual compensation. But so the reason I'm asking that question is because I think for them to do that, they're going to have to look at the percentage gain share in conjunction with the salaries. So my question is twofold. One, is this applicable to the 17% as well that was only tied to the financial surplus? And 2, the independent valuation of what we present, is it going to be inclusive of total compensation, which I think is standard for independent valuations that come in like this?
I think the first piece has to recognize that we're in compliance. I think I get the financial, and I'm 100% on board. If we do this without knowing where we stand or measure against our compliance, and we get a reporting period 4 months after, and our compliance record is a less than success, we haven't done our job. As a board, we haven't done our job, and our leadership team hasn't done its job. This is a huge, huge undertaking with the CIA. So I want to make sure that any compensation that we pay has to take into account successful adherence to our mandated compliance requirements. Not only successful compliance, but above what the minimum standard is. And I know it's a change from what we talked about previously, but it's pretty clear that those two have to be aligned. If we weren't under a CIA and we didn't have this, compliance issue for, I don't know, going back as probably as long as I've been alive, wouldn't matter. But I think in this day and age, with where we are as an organization, compliance has to be, I think, the number one issue, because compliance gets to a lot of things. Compliance gets to patient care. Compliance gets to quality, to service levels, to employment issues and employee issues. So I just think there needs to be some measure in there in compliance, and I think that's what I want to look at on the first piece. I know that's a change in what we've talked about, but as I've had a chance to think through that for the last 20 days, I've been up at night thinking about that a lot, and I think it's important. I think we need to hold you guys and the leadership team accountable for compliance, and we don't have that metric in front of us. I think this is my opinion. I've got 3 other members of this board, and I'm happy to hear, and I would like to hear their input from that, but that's where I'm going with this. My name's the chair of the HR committee, and this is going to live with me into the future. And I know that I'm the first to admit if I missed something or I did something wrong, I'm going to step up and say, you know what, I missed it. I didn't think this through. I think I'm thinking it through, and I think it's critical. And I know we've talked about it, but this is important. I think this is a center point of what we do is compliance here. All of our issues come from compliance. And we've got to make sure that this organization is not 100% compliant, but it's 120% compliance. And I think it's one of the 4 buckets, but to me it's the most important bucket that we get right, because compliance is going to lead us to getting everything else right.
Are there additional thoughts from you commissioners?
Yes, I agree with the second half of the analysis. I agree that I need to see that balanced scorecard. I want to hear those metrics, but I don't agree with the first part. We already voted, I think, on the bonus that's based strictly on the gain. To give it to those people one day and take it away the next day, I can't reconcile that. We also heard that most of these employees who will be subject to that are now under industry scale, and that the bonus is making the difference between under industry scale and what they would get outside Broward Health. So I agree with you on the metrics, the scorecard, that whole thing, but I don't agree on the 17%.
Well, let me add, just comment on that part. First, you're 100% correct, Commissioner Wellens. I mean, if this organization fails in compliance and is somehow not meeting the requirements of the CIA or any other appropriate compliance requirement, nobody deserves a bonus, okay? I don't believe that was, at least, let's just call it the spirit of what was discussed before. If reconciling what was addressed previously with confirming the caveat that we are in compliance and at a minimum in compliance with all relevant things, including the CIA, I would be totally supportive of that. I guess maybe I perhaps should not have operated under the assumption that we were all on board with the CIA, but I believe that is at a minimum the spirit of what was discussed and what was presented. So if I'm understanding you correctly, because I do want to say I share your view that it's really not particularly appropriate to say, here, you can take this and no, we're going to take it back. But having the clarity that meeting compliance requirements is an element of that, I think is 100% correct. And any suggestion otherwise, I don't believe was intentional.
It's in the balanced scorecard we drafted. And I think you'll find from an independent group that compliance is not a component or percentage of income of your gain share. It's really a contingency on earning anything. So usually the bonus incentives are, if you're written up, which would be a condition of you're not meeting a CIA, for example, that should be you're not eligible. But I guess I think I understand what you're saying. The question that I had, I think I got answered, which was, we want to present something to an independent group to be able to come back and say, look, yes, we're independent, we have no ties to anything, this is customary, and here's where it is on the percentile, and from the governing body, we're hearing compliance is important in it, so whether it's in other institutions' gain share program or not, we can include it. So I think I have my answer. It's just at least I think I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I ever want to do is tell someone to do something and can't do it. All I'm saying is if we do this, let's make sure that we've achieved what we need to achieve. Because if the monitor comes back in August or September or October, and we fail the reporting period, and we paid everybody a bonus, and we haven't done our job, as stewards of the public money. That's all I'm saying is I want to look at our policies. I want to look at what the benefit plan is or was, and I want to look at what's customary and make sure that whatever we do is reasonable. And I think that's the first piece of it can be done much quicker than the second piece, but we have much less time to deal with the first piece. So that's why I asked to call a meeting on Tuesday, and I want to get going on this right away.
Yeah, if I can, I just want to speak to the topic. I think that there's been a very useful discussion. And I think, at the end of the day, the most important thing is we all have a duty of care as members of this board. And we have to make sure we're doing things for the right reason and with the right information and with the right incentives and the right goals in mind. And the way I look at what transpired at our prior meeting in this regard was adoption of a general outline of plans that were going to be implemented subject to further detail being provided. So I view this myself as more in the nature of a clarification rather than a restart or a redo or undo of something that's already been decided. I had many questions at the last meeting, as you all will recall, about what we were deciding upon and what was going to go into that. And I voted for that based on the understanding that this was a structure that was going to be something was going to be built around, rather than this being a comprehensive plan that was already adopted and implemented and was going to start tomorrow. So I think that what Commissioner Wellens is proposing is we take those further steps, we take them more quickly than might otherwise have been envisioned, and with outside independent help, which I think is very important, to have the outside guidance and counsel from folks who are well-versed in this area, so that this board can make the proper decision based on that input, based on the further information we're going to gather, and based on the further investigation of the HR committee. So to me, I think at the end of the day, we need to properly incentivize our people, and the dollar aspect is only one part of this. There's a lot of considerations that factor into whether our system is succeeding or failing. And certainly the financial component is an important element, but it's by far from the only component. And I think what I'm hearing is that, obviously compliance is an extremely important component, and that has to be part of even the year one plan. So just folks understand, there was a year one plan, as I understood it, and then a year two and going forward plan. The year two and going forward plan was much more involved, much more detailed, with a lot of different metrics and factors being involved. The year one plan was primarily financial, but my feeling is it cannot be solely financial, and I think that's what Commissioner Wellens is expressing as well, and I think others are expressing, is we need to make sure that as we further implement that plan, we need to make sure what it is we're implementing. And this board has several people who are being compensated in the system who are direct reports to this board. So part of our setting that compensation with the proper incentives is for our direct reports, and then, for others who are not direct reports, which I would take to be in the nature of setting policy rather than setting direct compensation. So I think that at this point, I'll entertain a motion, or we can have further discussion on the topic, with the suggestion that perhaps we may want to divide the two questions into the year one plan versus the year two going forward plan. So
Let me ask another question on the year one plan. So when would that bonus be distributed? The year one 17%?
50% of it would be distributed after the June financials are approved by the board, and then the other 50% we were holding back for the audit.
Okay, and so if we also table that, if we also move that to further consideration, do you think it's reasonable that we could get enough information for that 17% to go forward, leaving aside part two?
Well, there's two ways to do this. One is, as you're presenting. The other is, we look at the tiers of employees. And so for the senior management team, the ultimately signatures to the CIA is one group. And then it's the management team at the hospitals, the nursing staff and all that, nurse leaders, is another. They're not necessarily signatories to the CIA.
Correct, certifying. They're not.
Right, they're not certified employees.
That's
So-
not true. They are certified.
Well, they are, but they don't have the same responsibility as the CEO of the hospital does, or
Correct.
or a direct report to us. Is what I'm getting at. I don't want to misconstrue it. Okay, so it might be that there's a two-tier portion of that. So qualifying for that it might be that you want qualification for that piece to be different for the two levels, right?
That's my
A higher
concern.
standard-
I mean, with all
a higher
due
standard
respect.
for the 24 or 25 senior management than
There it
the
is.
260 or so hospital agency-based individuals. And I don't know, and that's why I want to get advice on that as to what's appropriate, what's reasonable. Everybody's got a compliance requirement here, but the level of compliance requirement is different as you move up in leadership. And your ultimate responsibility, you're being paid for more and more responsibility. So we want to make sure that we tie compensation to responsibility. That's all I'm saying. So it might be that we bifurcate,
I get that, but if it were to be distributed in June and we can't finish in June, could it be distributed in July or August? Could it just be delayed?
That's what I want.
So that-
That's what I want to explore pretty quickly, so that we can set forth a plan that we're all comfortable with. Bring it back to the board. You know exactly what the plan is, and we then address it. And I think we can do the first part quicker than the second part, much quicker than the second part.
I really would strongly urge the board to reconsider at least for the managers, the tier 2 and 3, the managers who have been receiving payment,
Those are my
who
concerns.
haven't had, I don't care about the executive and senior level group. I'm very concerned about our lower level managers who've been bringing this up since the day I started, and bring it up probably twice a week.
And who've already been promised that it's going to happen.
Correct.
Right, and I think that very well may be the right approach to secure the first piece while we work on the second piece. And I think that's a doable thing in a quick period of time, okay?
And Gina, what were the numbers of those tier 1, 2, and 3 roughly? It was 300?
I want to say there's about 300 people total in it, and I mean the majority, I don't know, Peter's, sorry, how many are the tier 2 and 3? It's probably at least 250.
I think it was in that nature.
There's about 290.
I'm sorry, just your name so we...
Oh, hi, I'm Tori Drakeford. I work in Human Resources.
Thank you, Tori.
You're right. The amount is about 290 that would be eligible based on our hire date.
That's the complete pool?
Yes.
Okay, so what is the tier, is it tier 1, 2, and 3, or is it just tier 1 and 2?
There's tier 1 and 2. In the past, there used to be a tier 1, 2, and 3. But we've moved them in together into the same groups.
So what would be the
Managers.
level of tier 2 and below?
There's a tier 1 and tier 2. The tier 1s are your 25 that you're talking about today. Your tier 2
Is that the number though? 25?
it's about 25.
Yeah, okay. So the vast majority.
It's like
is
the
Right,
VP,
and
CEO.
I think that we deal with tier 2. Tier 2 has I think from my perspective, tier 2 would have a lower qualifying standard than tier 1. Because you ultimately are the ones running the district, and I think that's, to get to what you were talking about, that's something that I would like to explore pretty quickly.
So what qualifying standard would tier 2 have, other than the fact that the money has been earned? I mean, there is no qualifying
not be.
standard for
Right.
this first year.
Right. There may
There's
not
my
be.
concern.
And it may be that we're okay without it. I think we just need to discuss it and explore it quickly.
Doesn't the schedule that we have currently allow for that discussion to take place prior to the payouts having been anticipated to begin with?
Yes.
And so if we can act quickly on this, then it wouldn't upset what the expectation was that was already out there.
Of course, that was what, I think that, in a weird way, I think we're kind of all saying about the same thing. So we have a HR committee meeting on Tuesday. I don't know exactly what the motion is, to be honest, but
But we will be reconvening May 30th, and that would be prior to any payout having been due.
well, I'm hopeful we can reconvene sooner, because we got 2 independent audit committee members that I'd like to interview, sooner, so perhaps we can do.
And Commissioner
Something
Klein,
synonymous.
the HR committee has been noticed for 8:30 on Tuesday morning. Already, it's already in the papers or in the website.
Okay, so if this goes forward, the HR committee on Tuesday morning at 8:30 will begin consideration of these issues, bring them back to the full board, which will be no later than May 30th.
Correct. And we may very well be right on the time schedule. I need the authority to move forward and do this the right way as the chair of the HR committee. And it might be some slight modifications to what we're talking about, but I want to do the right thing. That's all I care about. So-
Absolutely. Can you put that in a form of motion?
So you make a motion to do the right
Yes.
thing?
I'm going to make 3 motions.
Spike Lee.
Okay, can we make 3 motions in 1 vote, or 3 motions in 3 votes?
Let me just ask one thing before you do that. If I were those employees, I would say, great, I'm going to HCA, Tenant, Jackson. I would be out of here if you gave it to me with one hand and took away with the other. Why can't you explore, without us re-voting or rescinding our earlier vote, on at least tier 2? Why can't you leave tier 2 in place right now, explore, and then come back if there's a concern? Because everyone seems to think there's not going to be a concern. I just don't want those people to have us leave here today saying we took it away again.
Well, I think that depends on what the motion is going to be. I mean, perhaps that will be the motion.
That's why I mentioned it.
But at the end of the day, there was already a board decision at the last meeting to whatever it covered. And what we're doing today is going to be either modifying or amending or clarifying that decision. So that's what we need to now iron out, is what is going to be, what is the next step? It may be, I mean, it seems to me that it may be the ultimate conclusion that there's no change at all to the year one plan.
So
that's
can't
a
HR,
Sort of what I think the HR committee already has all of this power and authority to evaluate and come back to the board with a concern. As it relates to going forward, with respect to the balanced scorecard, the way things were left the last time, nothing is going to get paid out, nobody's going to earn anything until that balanced scorecard is approved and those metrics are approved regardless, except for the very year one element with respect to, and I knew where you're going. Okay. He's,
all now jumping on the dais.
That's right. But my feeling is that the HR committee already has all of this authority, with the exception of engaging through general counsel, independent outside party, to assist in evaluating the
Here's my
merits of what is being.
I don't disagree with Commissioner Gregoire or you, Commissioner Ure, what you're saying. I haven't seen who's eligible.
Right.
I haven't seen who those 268 or 270 people are. Okay, I haven't seen the list, physically seen the list, who they are, what their role is, what their responsibilities are, and where they line up on the thing, in the grand scheme of the district. I know who the 25 are. It's pretty obvious. We all know them. They come up to the podium, they speak. They're part of our leadership team. Okay. So all I'm saying to you is, I think we need to clarify where we're going, and I think the first piece of it is something that can be clarified pretty quickly. I want outside counsel to advise to say, yes, we can tier this two ways. What you're doing is reasonable. It's within the guidelines. Blah blah blah, and that covers the tier two. We can deal with tier one and then deal with the ongoing gain share going forward. Because the payouts on between tier two and tier one, the numbers of people is significant, and I believe that the 265 or so are important, critical, operational individuals at our district, and we want to do the right thing for them. We just want to make sure that and I think that might be able to something that we can resolve Tuesday and announce it and put it in place and go forward. I just want the authority to engage outside counsel through the general counsel's office, get the advice, look at what Peter's been working on, because I haven't seen, and we may have a lot more information after Tuesday.
But we can do all of that. You can get the names, you can get the present salaries, the amount of bonus that they're entitled to, without changing the existing vote. You can do all that on Tuesday and leave the vote in place. You do not want to leave this meeting with those people hearing that we rescinded that vote. If there is a concern, then we have time to do it later. That's all I'm saying.
Commissioner, I just think for clarification, I'm not hearing anybody's rescinding the vote, that they're putting details on the conceptual vote that was done the last time. So there were 3 classes, now there are 2. Who were in the 2? Why were there 3 and 2? And I think, and I'm just guessing for Commissioner Wellens, the reason he's looking for the authority is that it usually goes HR up, not board down. And I think that's what
And that's fine,
Tuesday
as
will
long
be.
as we don't
Just-
change that vote.
We're not changing.
I don't think the vote.
The conceptual plan that we approved, we're not rescinding it. We're just saying we don't want any more implementation until we've looked at that. I want to look at why we went from 3 tiers to 2 tiers. Who's in tier 2 and who's in tier 1? We know tier 1. We don't know who's in tier 2. Maybe it should be tier 1, 2, and 3. I don't know. I haven't seen the physical organizational chart of who tier 2 is. My intent is to make sure that tier 2 employees, I think it covers a vast majority of our operational people in the hospitals, and I think we want to do everything we can to retain those people, pay them well, and keep them happy.
And there would be
100%.
no implementation until June anyway, because that would be the
Right,
first
July,
pay.
Until
May I
June,
say-
July, or when everything is settled,
Right.
and you have paper.
So that's the only thing I don't want to change.
We're not changing it. We've adopted conceptually that we want to do this. We just need to define it better before we do anything else. We produce any more documents or show anything outside of the HR committee, because the HR committee hasn't seen it yet.
Fine with that.
So Peter?
Yes, thank you so much, board members. So just to be clear, our discussion has always been about 2 tiers. We out there in the community, as you're looking, there's different classes and different, not classes, but levels of employees that you'll find. So we actually, my team worked very hard to make sure that this extended to as large a group of employees as possible, which is not your industry standard to begin with. So it was very important for our team that as many of the managers received this benefit in a way that really is went above and beyond what you'll find in the industry. In the industry, the way it sits, really, a lot of times only your most senior leaders are the ones that receive these incentives, and to a much lesser extent, employees not at the highest level. So, and that's not how we wanted to approach it. So that's part of, we took a lot of time. My team worked tirelessly to come up with a plan that we presented. We feel confident about it, and I think it will pass muster with any type of evaluation. So.
Thank you, Peter. So I think that the motion, as I understand it, would be to authorize the HR committee to retain counsel to further
through the
review
general
plan
counsel's
as
office.
proposed.
Through the general counsel's office.
Through the general counsel's office to review the plan as being proposed and report back to the board with any further recommendations.
Yeah, and I would imagine we could report back to the board before the next, at the next board meeting. If not earlier, if we haven't, if a need be, we'd call a special board meeting and do it.
Okay.
Is that
I don't have any issue with that.
Yeah.
I'm all for doing it right, and
Yeah.
all for, I do like the independent aspect. I think that's an excellent addition to our ability to assess the merits.
Okay, so can someone formalize that motion? I'll entertain that motion.
Mr. Wellens, you're on, that's you, man.
I'd like to make a motion that the board grants the HR committee the authority to engage counsel through the general counsel's office, independent of Broward Health, to help us evaluate and produce documents related.
Setting forth the details
Setting forth the policies and details of the incentive compensation plan
for all years.
for all years, correct.
Second.
Okay, the motion's made and seconded. Is there further comment on the motion or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The motion carries. That item is concluded. Comments by commissioners. Next item, Commissioner Gregoire.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my fellow commissioners. I said before, we have to do everything in the open. We have to do our fighting in the open, and we have to do our getting along together in the open. But that's what the Sunshine Law requires of us. So what you see up here is what happens at your dinner tables and, in your clubhouses and things like that. We have to disagree in public. We do, but we do it with the best interests of Broward Health and the community at heart. We're all trying to do the right thing as we understand the right thing to be. So I hope you'll hang in there with us and help us. Criticize us constructively when you must, but let us know when we've done something appropriate also. And I want to thank you all for your support also.
Commissioner Wellens?
I want to thank everybody on this board for understanding this is difficult, this is hard. There's 4 of us, there should be 7 of us. Commissioner Uri and I are here for 11 hours over the last 2 days, hour after hour of pension investment. This is a huge time commitment. And I want to thank all of you for sticking with us, because with 4 of us, we have no margin for error in terms of trying to make this work. And I don't think there's anybody on this board that is doing this because we care about everybody in this room and everybody in Broward Health. There's no other reason why we would ever accept this role if we didn't care about the people that we're serving, because this takes a lot of time away from your family, from your life, from your business, and it's a disruption. But to me, it's a worthwhile disruption. So I want to thank everybody on this board and the staff and everybody that's been with us. And we're going to get all this right for you. So that's all I say. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman Uri?
I'm going to be brief because my daughter's National Honor Society ceremonies this evening, and I sure as hell don't want to miss that. But being here when there's only 4 of us and you need 4 of us, those are sometimes the things that you end up missing, which I don't want to do. So my daughter will be very happy that we concluded swiftly, so thank you.
Oh, just a reminder, we do have a closed strategy session.
Oh, Jesus, it better be swift.
Yes, and before we proceed to that, General Counsel, one logistical item. We know, I'm wondering if we need to add one final item, which is appointment of a Secretary Treasurer, that apparently vacating that position, hope to be vacating that position.
Yes.
I think there's only one option.
So I think there is only one option. Can I make a motion to walk that onto the agenda?
Sure.
Okay, I make a motion to walk onto the agenda the appointment of a Secretary Treasurer to the board.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll move that Commissioner Wellens be named Secretary Treasurer.
And I'm going to,
Wait, we don't even have a second yet.
I second.
Oh. It's only you.
I'm going to have to take it under advisement because I'm not sure I have, I'm not sure I could actually serve in the role of Secretary Treasurer because that would require me to be Chair of Finance, and that might create a conflict with my approval, and that was why I was getting at last month. So it might be that I might have to nominate Commissioner Uri as my replacement, and we might have to change roles at some point here from audit to finance. And I think let's table this till next meeting, and I'll work with the general counsel or Bev or somebody and lay out what I can and can't do from a conflict standpoint. I think that would create a problem for me, and I don't think I could do it as much as I would like to.
All right, well, the motion to table takes precedence. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the motion to table has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion, that item's been tabled. My closing comments, I would just once again say thank you. I think I already spoke, to the appreciation I have for the confidence of my fellow commissioners and all of you for the new role. I hope to succeed in that capacity, and appreciate all the help I'm going to need in fulfilling that role as chairman. With that, I obviously I'm glad we as an organization and as a system continue to move forward, and that's going to continue to be our focus at all times. With that, I'll just note that we have a closed strategic planning session or meeting following the adjournment of this board meeting. That is closed to the public under section 395.3035 of the Florida statutes. With that, I'll entertain, I'll also note that the next regularly scheduled board meeting is scheduled for May 30th, 2018 at 4 p.m. at this same location. Unless there's one.
You can take a brief recess, but the public portion still remains. Then you close it, and then you come back out, and then you adjourn. So you
Okay.
technically don't adjourn yet.
Okay, so at this point,
Chairman, do you want me to read the preface?
You can, if the board wants to take a 5-minute break before
Okay.
starting, it's up to the board.
If we could take a 2 or 3 minute break, that'd be fine.
yes, why don't we take a 3-minute break? This concludes the public session.
Not yet.
Not yet.
We're just recessing the public
All
session.
right, so recess
Taking-
the
Sorry,
public session for 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Till
It's his
5:40.
first time as chairman. Is it not obvious? Well, I've sat here with